Hello, and welcome back to the True Crime Guys podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Michael.
All right, how's everybody doing on this fine spring day? We got another heist episode for you. I don't know if we're going to name this one part of the heist series. Much different type of heist, though. It's not, they weren't doing it for money. They weren't doing it for recognition.
No.
They were doing it to expose our intelligence agencies, namely the FBI back in 1971, who were really doing some pretty evil, clandestine shit, really trying to stop people's First Amendment rights, trying to stop people from speaking their mind and you know, being anti-war and a lot of things that, democracy is made up. They were trying to stop that. And so these people exposed them.
And they were trying to divide wedges in society in such particular ways that I found very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So we did watch a documentary called 1971. You can find it on YouTube. I rented it on there. Michael found a free version on YouTube. So
yeah, there you go.
One way or another, you can find it to watch on there. And I think it's also on like Amazon Prime and whatnot. But very well done. Very enjoyable. They had the people from this actual heist who came out like 40 years after it happened.
That's the beauty of it.
Spoiler, they got away with it. Unlike many other whistleblowers and people that expose government agencies, they actually got away with it and only came out because they wanted to 40 years later. Now they're really old and there's the statute of limitations has run up, so they can't be charged for these crimes anymore.
Right.
So yeah, they came out and they were featured in the documentary. There's been a book written about them and about this heist. And so yeah, we'll talk about that and go over the whole heist. It wasn't quite Ocean's 11. It was it was not. Really, all they used was a lockpick and some suitcases, but made away with like 10,000 documents from the FBI, one of the FBI headquarters.
Right.
So
far more
pretty
interesting. Far more important than Ocean's 11, but yeah, not as Hollywood, not as flashy of a heist. Not like what was it, Spaggiari, Albert Spaggiari, the French heistman.
Yeah.
He was more of a showboat type heist. But these people didn't, like we said before, these people didn't do any of this for personal gain. They had everything to lose. It's like,
yeah, obviously, because they stayed in shadows for the next 40 years. That's how little they cared about the recognition. They just wanted the results of the FBI and CIA, them having a little bit more scrutiny as far as what they're allowed to get away with.
Right. But man, just the stress of having to live that way, always looking over your shoulder for the FBI. The FBI's everywhere because you just uncovered that information.
I'm sure they relaxed after the 5-year statute of limitations. They were like, yeah, I still don't really want them to know who I am because who knows what the Fed will try to dig up on me and arrest me for. Mm-hmm. Even though they can't charge me for this one, they could find something to get me with. So,
I'm sure.
But yeah. And I can think of at least one couple in this that were a part of this heist. They had a lot to lose because they had 3 children.
They did.
And so they were taking a huge risk being a part of this. But let's not give the whole story away.
Yeah,
let's talk about that after your intro.
All right.
So at that time, we had just within a few years gone through the sort of peak of the civil rights movement, and many of the laws like the Voting Rights Act had been passed some years before, but the reality of racial justice was still far from complete. There were the war in Vietnam was raging at that point in time, and so there were many people who were working for change in those areas in particular. There were 4 students killed at Kent State and 2 more killed at Jackson State, and that really pushed me over the edge. That it was time to do more than just protest, than just march with a sign.
We do not believe that nonviolence is dead, and that we don't believe in interposing one form of violence for another, and that we believe that an action like this will still speak to our fellow Americans and bring home to them that a decent society is still possible, but it's totally impossible if these files and what they represent are preserved and honored and even defended as those poor women tried to.
That was a very dramatic moment for all of us, I believe. It took civil disobedience to another level and really brought us clearly to another level of protest against the war in Vietnam.
J. Edgar Hoover's FBI was all over the civil rights movement with infiltrators and surveillance, intense surveillance, and people that would report back on meetings and so on. And of course, we all know that J. Edgar Hoover and his FBI went after Martin Luther King, tried to discredit him, indeed even sent him a note suggesting that because of his activities with other women besides his wife, he now had no option but to commit suicide. That note was sent to Dr. King suggesting, and it was from the FBI, suggesting that Dr. King commit suicide.
All right, our case this week is the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI.
Ooh.
And this was actually a suggestion from a Patreon member. We got the suggestion during a Just the Banter episode. Thank you to Aaron, Patreon member, who suggested this case. We were unaware of it. I don't think it's well known enough. You know, it kind of should be lumped in there with the famous whistleblowers, you know, like Wikileaks, the Pentagon Papers, Edward Snowden. It should be in that same conversation. And really, they were the first major case of this, of exposing Central Intelligence Agency or the FBI, you know, our intelligence agencies that play a big role in our everyday life.
Absolutely.
As far as their surveillance of us, especially in modern times following 9/11.
And I was a little bit ashamed that I didn't know about this case, to be honest. I'm like, wow, this is really important shit. This is a really important part of our history. I mean, I get why it's been kicked to the side for obvious reasons, which you guys will find out. But it still was very surprising. I was kind of disappointed that I didn't know about this. To me, it's that important through history.
So, if you don't know, you'll know by the end of this. But yeah, we watched, as we mentioned, the film documentary 1971, which was made in 2014 when a lot of stuff came to light. In 2014, the members of the group, the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI, a group of 8 people. Several of them, not all of them. One of them, the leader of it, had unfortunately died the year prior in 2013. But several of them were tracked down by a reporter, and they finally decided it was time that they could come out and talk about it. And a book was written. And so, yeah, it's a lot more has come to light in 2014. A lot of stuff broke, and that's when this documentary was made. And the book was called "The Burglary." The discovery of J. Edgar Hoover's secret FBI, and it would be written by a reporter that played an important role, very important role in this.
Yes.
She was the only one that was willing to publish the stuff that was stolen from the FBI by the Citizens Commission.
Right. That's journalist Betty Metzger.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about her. We'll get into all that. So yeah, you've probably heard. I'm sure everyone's heard of Edward Snowden.
Oh, Edward who? Edward Snowden.
Yeah, exactly. Possibly the most famous whistleblower in history.
No
But
doubt.
12 years before he was born, way back in 1971, a group of 8 people pulled off a bold heist. Much like Snowden, they had one goal in mind, and it wasn't money or recognition. It was exposing government-funded control and corruption. However, unlike Snowden, they got away with it, they got away with it for over 43 years. Well, to this day,
they got away with it for their whole lives now. They got away with it.
But I mean, they got away, and no one knew who it was for over 43 years.
Yeah,
which is amazing that no one talked. It's truly amazing.
it really is.
But
But
a group of 8 people like that, they had to have told a select few people, and it branches out and it becomes a spider web. And the next thing you know, that's how you get caught.
Yeah.
You tell one person, they tell one person, and it's just.
Well, you know that one of the people's children that was involved ended up telling a friend. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying.
Nothing came of it. That's why I don't mind saying it now. Nothing came of it, but it's just I'm just saying that's like you're saying. There's one more spider web that could have took place and led them back to.
Yeah, I think following the statute of limitations, I think it gets to the point where it had been 20, 30 years, and they're like, you know what? If people find out at this point, then they find out. It's not that big of a deal anymore.
That's right. You can finally exhale.
Yeah. So 7 of the 8 who could be found agreed to be interviewed by journalist Betty Metzger, who was writing a nonfiction book on the event called The Burglary. And so this whole thing, it started way back in 1970. There was obviously a lot of division going on in our country. There was a lot of, there was a whole peace movement going on. There was an anti-war movement with the Vietnam War going on. Right. Anti-draft movement, big time. And there was a group
Of course, civil
that
rights.
kind of spawned the idea for this heist within the leader when he heard about this dude, Bill Davidon, who we'll talk a lot about, he heard about the Flower City Conspiracy, which was another group of people who had done something similar to what this group did. On September 6, 1970, the offices of the Selective Service, FBI, and the U.S. Attorney were ransacked during the early hours of Sunday morning. The 8 young people involved identified themselves as the Flower City Conspiracy, and the FBI knew of their plans long before the break-in. Detailed information coming from an existing wiretap on one of the members. All 8 members of the conspiracy were convicted. So they went in there to destroy a bunch of draft cards.
Right.
Obviously, people were being drafted left and right to go fight in Vietnam, a war that many in our society viewed as reckless and something we shouldn't have been involved in the first place. And a lot of young people were dying because of it.
Yes, they were.
So whether you believe in it or not, there was obviously a big movement against it. And the Flower City Conspiracy opened the eyes of Bill Davidon, who was a professor of physics at Haverford College, sorry. It's quite different.
Yeah, a little bit.
When you see it, though, you just immediately go to...
not that different in the timeline, no. But
Right.
in life.
So Bill Davidon was a professor of physics at Haverford College and a fixture of anti-war protests in Philadelphia. He saw what the Flower City Conspiracy Group had done and figured he could do it better. If you could break into the Selective Service FBI offices,
Right.
and just destroy draft cards, then he figured we could break in and steal documents and expose them.
Right. I think the Flower City Conspiracy was that nudge that they needed. They were like, holy shit,
Yes.
like you can actually get
It was
into
eye-opening.
one of these places? You can actually get in? You would think that it would just be 24-hour security, armed guards at every entrance, every window, but apparently not in the 70s.
It depended. I mean, because they had these little substations, if you will. They had little offices kind of all over the country.
True.
They had main headquarters. Like they had a main headquarters
you're not
the
getting
FBI
into
did
main
in Philadelphia, and you weren't getting into that one. They realized that pretty quickly, that one was 24-hour surveillance, security, the works. So yeah, as we mentioned, Bill Davidon, he saw this as an opportunity. He figured, he could do this, and rather than just destroying draft paperwork and whatnot and trying to prevent people from being drafted in the war, they could actually try and break into the FBI offices and expose information. They knew that there was a lot of fishy stuff going on. They knew that at these gatherings, these anti-war protests that they were doing, that there was a lot of informants, there was a lot of agitators that were among them that were members of the FBI or people that the FBI had hired to go in and kind of spoil their movement.
It was so funny.
And they wanted to expose
It was so
this.
interesting the way that they said that they could pick the FBI agents out. They said that they were, what they call them, like hippies in progress or something like that.
They wore like combat boots.
And they were like just starting.
They were like saying kill the pigs and all this stuff.
They were just starting to grow stubble and their hair was just slightly long. I just love those descriptions.
Right. They didn't have that 20-year hippie commitment, with the full beard.
You're not all about it, man. I can tell. Look how short your hair is.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So Bill Davidon, he saw that there was an opportunity here, and he decided it was time to put together a group of people. Philadelphia, by the early 1970s, had become an epicenter of the peace movement, and Bill was frustrated that years of organized demonstrations seemed to have little impact. He and other activists like himself had also noticed an influx of FBI informants and agitators in their midst. They believed that the FBI was spending countless dollars and time trying to divide and discredit their movement. So he believed the only way to prove the Bureau was engaged in unconstitutional surveillance against anti-war activists was to break into an FBI office and steal the incriminating records, and then basically give them to journalists and to politicians, and hopefully somebody would publish this to the public so that everyone would see. Because at this time, this was a time where there was very little distrust in our federal agencies. The FBI, the CIA, they were very well trusted.
Yeah, they were.
At this time, there was even a famous show that had been running for like 10 years up until 1970, called the FBI. I think it was, at least the documentary talked about it and showed a clip of this cheesy show.
Yeah, it's basically like a crime detective show. It was like 2 FBI agents solving crime.
Right.
I seen them put like 4 rounds into a guy's chest at like from 5 feet away, and the guy was still.
He had a little package
and
bomb.
He's still like flopping around, and then they're both like looking at the bomb, and the guy's like, "Do it." It's like, do what, bro? I don't know about it. Like, he just pulls a wire off. Like, insane. But you know what's crazy about this whole case, man? When they decided, like, this is a great plan, right? You believe that the FBI is hiding things, and you're like, all we need to do to prove to everybody is just go into an office and steal incriminating records. But how did you know that office had incriminating records? Like, you took one of the biggest gamble of your life on, like, breaking into this office in hopes that you find incriminating things. Like, yes, they did.
I think they just had a hunch that there was so much of it everywhere with the FBI because they were just so bold and no one was doing any kind of checks and balances as far as they just had kind of like unchecked power.
Yeah.
And they just knew if they could get their hands on enough files, no matter which office it was, that there would be incriminating stuff in there. They just knew it.
That makes sense.
And look, I think we should make it clear here. The FBI, I think, does vastly more good than bad, and maybe I'm naive in that, but I'd like to think they do a lot more stopping of, things that could harm the general public and we won't know. We won't know the good that they do most of the time because it's classified information. Same with the CIA. I do think they're stopping a lot of terrorism on a regular basis, whether it's domestic or overseas terrorism, but also there has to be, you can't have unchecked power. They can't be completely in the face of the Constitution, just surveilling us for no reason or infiltrating groups that aren't doing any harm,
or agitating the situation.
These anti-war protesters, they're allowed to voice their opinions, and for them to send in people to try and agitate those groups and discredit them and things like that, that's just not what they're supposed to be doing.
Not only that, it's like, why are they doing it? Why is that so important to them, Lauren? That's the scary part. Why is it so important that you have to cause all this division constantly, that you'll send out these agents undercover, multiple ones, into big cities? I don't know.
Yeah. So in the summer of 1970, months after President Nixon was announced the United States invasion of Cambodia, Bill Davidon began assembling a team from a group of activists whose commitment and discretion he had come to trust. So this group of people that he knew for sure were not federal agents or informants. They had been in it for so long and they were so committed that he knew he could trust them. And it was a group of 9 initially, and it would ultimately be 8 that would see it through. One person would back out and make them very nervous because by the time that this member backed out, he already knew every bit of the plan, and he could completely basically lock them away forever if he ratted to the Fed. So
he got last minute.
He made them very nervous.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, they went forward. So let's talk about some of the notable members of this group. John and Bonnie Raines, who were actually a married couple and had 3 children at the time. This is the couple we were alluding to earlier that had a lot to lose, obviously, having young children. And they actually had to talk to, I think was it John's brother?
Yes.
They had to basically set up a backup plan in case they were, in fact, locked up for the rest of their lives over this.
That's 2 more people that were implemented in this plan, I thought about that later. I was like, oh, damn, they knew too. So they had to carry that burden.
Maybe they kept it vague. Maybe they just said, hey, we're doing something. Yeah. We're not going to tell you what it is, but we could end up being locked away for a long time, and are you willing to take care of our kids if that happens?
Right. But still, though, knowing that...
plausible deniability.
But still, even having to tell them that, and then knowing how the crime is perceived to the public later through the media, that was even sketchy. You know what I'm saying? Any loose ends were with a crime of this caliber.
Yeah, so the Rainies, let's talk about John Rainey. He had been a freedom rider and was on the famous bus ride in 1961, fighting against segregation. This bus that was burned, they drove through the South, and they were basically using like whites-only bathrooms and things like that, and they faced a lot of violence over that. The bus they were in was burned. They were badly beaten. The members that rode on this bus together, he was on that bus. And at the time that he joined this group to do this heist, he was a professor of religion at Temple University. And he had a quote in the documentary. He said, "I was ready to make a transition from nonviolent protest to nonviolent disruption." And he said he wanted to damage the war machine. That was his goal.
It's a pretty badass quote.
And him and his wife were badass, man.
Were.
His wife was beautiful and very intelligent, and remains politically active to this day.
Yeah, they both do.
Well into probably her 70s now. I don't know.
That's awesome. They both do. And I love what they said. They said that we couldn't let the fact that we're parents just let us shift the responsibility that we had or that we felt onto somebody else.
Yeah, they felt like it was a cop-out for them to bow out of it just because they were parents.
Yeah. Man, that hits hard, man. There's like people that like don't go out to dinner because they have kids. You know what I'm saying?
Their kids are now adults, and they talked in the documentary about how they had a little bit of resentment when they found this out years later. They were like, what if they had been put in prison? What would my life have been like if I was raised by my uncle instead of my parents? Like we definitely had some resentment for a while, but now we understand it.
Yeah. Get over that, kids. Your parents are heroes. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. You know what I'm saying? It worked out good. Damn. No, but I understand that. I can see how they could look at it later.
Yeah. And so another notable member was Keith Forsyth. This part's funny to me because it's kind of like a so cliche movie. You got like your demolitions guy, you got your lock picker. Keith was the lock picker. He had mechanical skills, and he was a young activist with not much to lose, and so he was chosen to be a part of the group, and he began to get to work. He actually took like classes on, I don't know how in 1970 you take classes on lock picking, but he educated himself on it, and he had like this little board with a bunch of different types of locks. Dude. And he would just work while they were doing their game plan for this heist. He would just sit there and pick locks all night.
In 1970, man, they probably had lock picking class in school. They used to do all kinds of crazy shit in school back then, man. The stuff my dad tells me about, the stuff they used to do, I'm like, what?
Right.
I guess they realized they were teaching kids too much. Like, we got to dumb this down a little bit. Keep them into the reading. Give them more math.
Yeah, my dad said he passed. There was a class that he had senior year that he had a deal with his teacher that he didn't have to show up for like the entire semester, but basically at the end of the semester he had to bring him a bottle of whiskey or something along those lines. Wow. He had to bring him liquor, the guy's preferred liquor, and he would pass him.
Well, there you go. 2 birds, 1 stone right there. He's probably like a shop
There's a lot of that going on back in the day. Kids also got paddled and hit with the rulers and all that stuff from what I've heard.
Oh yeah, that definitely happened. That was definitely common practice.
Yep. So a few more members. We had Robert Williamson, who was the recruiter of the group and an informal leader as well. Then you had Judy Feingold and Ralph Daniel, who came out last. They would later come clean as being members of the group, as well as 2 members that came out under alias names. So, yeah, I don't see any real benefit to coming out. You could come, like, I understand the 2 that came out with alias names. It's like, yeah, we'll talk, but our name doesn't need to be made public.
Exactly. I agree with that 100% because, yeah, you may be out of the FBI's eye, but you still, who knows what you still have in your possession. Like if you're part of that heist, the FBI's got to be thinking, well, they had thousands and thousands of pages. Only some of it surfaced. Like where's the rest? Who has it?
Right.
I mean, and you have to keep some, right? You have to keep some, something hidden underneath your floorboards or something.
Yeah, some proof, right? Look, this is an original document.
Exactly. Got to have something.
Yep. So the group was meeting every night. They would actually meet at the Rainey's home. So they said it was weird. Like we'd have these clandestine meetings, and it was in this family home. There's like kids, and Bonnie's making spaghetti and meatballs, and they're in the basement planning out this raid of the FBI office.
That's how they stayed underneath, man. Everybody thought that was just a typical dinner party. Just some friends hanging out. That's really how they flew under the radar, I think. It really helped. If any of them had like high profile positions, it wouldn't have worked. I really don't think so.
Yeah, so the group concluded that it would be too risky to try and break into the FBI office in downtown Pennsylvania. That was like the main building, the main FBI building in PA, and it was tightly secured, 24 hours. The works. Security was very tight and intense there, so they started looking around and they realized that there was these little satellite offices all over, and there was actually one in Media, Pennsylvania, and it was actually just like one little single office in an apartment building on the 3rd floor of an apartment building across the street from the county courthouse. And so that when they started surveilling this building, and it was just an apartment building, so you could walk in and out the front doors and go up to the FBI office.
Right.
And there was just a normal, the first time they looked, there was just a normal lock on the door. Still, they couldn't be certain whether the office would have documents about the FBI surveillance of ward protesters or whether there was an alarm system in the office. So they spent months casing the building. driving past it at all times of night and memorizing the routines of its residents. Quote, "We knew when people came home from work, when their lights went out, when they went to bed, when they woke up in the morning," said John Raines. "We were quite certain that we understood the nightly activities in and out of that building." So they spent months doing their due diligence and really mapping out a plan here. They had drawn up maps, and they even ended up sending in Bonnie to get a little bit more intel on the office itself. So it wasn't until Bonnie Raines got inside the office that the group grew confident that it could that it didn't have a security system and that it did in fact have file cabinets filled with potentially confidential information that they would love to expose.
Right.
So
this was a great
weeks
plan.
before the burglary. Yeah, this is very movie-esque right here. They send in Bonnie, under disguise as a college student. Weeks before the burglary, she visited the office posing as a Swarthmore College student, researching job opportunities for women at the FBI.
Easy as that.
So they dolled her up. She already looked young. She already looked younger than she was. So they put her in some big glasses and would they have like a scarf on her and just kind of made her look like a college student, whatever a 1970s college student looks like.
And she was 29 at this time.
But easily could have passed for like 23.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think in the original description that's given later of her, they said 25. They guessed 25. But when she showed up, they for sure thought she was 18, 19, young, because they wouldn't have known otherwise. They just put that 25 out there later because they're thinking she's got to be at least 25.
Yeah, so she actually went to this apartment building, went up to the third floor where the FBI office, and she had scheduled a meeting with the agent that was at the office for her to sit down and do this interview, on what it's like what kind of opportunities there were in the FBI for women these days. And she actually sat down in the office for half an hour with this agent and got a good look around the place and pretended to be writing down information like she gave it down.
Right.
And the part I liked is when she got up, she made it a point to act like she accidentally got lost. She went, down kind of the hallway of this office instead of out like right for the front door of it. And she got a look that there was another door. She found out that there was in fact two doors. There was another door that led to the hallway on the third floor. And this would come to be very, very vital information because they were kind of thrown for a loop on the night of the heist when they found out that there was a different lock on the door than there had been prior, and it was not pickable.
Do you think you think that was just out of paranoia? They changed it after her visit, like just in case?
Yeah, I don't know. It is weird, right? It's weird that they chose to change it. So the group were all set. They were convinced that they could make this work, and they picked a specific night which they thought might give them an extra advantage. The advantage of distraction. They chose Monday, March 8th, 1971, which happened to be the night of the fight of the century between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier.
Perfect.
The fight was widely regarded as the biggest boxing match in history and arguably the single most anticipated and hyped sporting event ever. It was the first time ever that two undefeated boxers has fought each other for the heavyweight title. This was a massive deal. The world was going to be watching this fight.
Oh, yeah, no doubt, including the guards at the FBI office.
Yes, that's what they were hoping for. That's what they were hoping for. The boxing match brought a broad appeal for many Americans, including non-boxing and sport fans. Ali had become a symbol for the left. That's the kind of the irony of this too, is it was a very politically charged fight because you had on opposite ends of the spectrum with the two boxers. You had Ali, who was a symbol for the left-wing anti-establishment movement. He obviously refused to go to. I think he either like burned his draft card or something. He refused to go to Vietnam even though he was drafted, and he actually spent time in jail and lost like a valuable time of his fight career over it. And then you had Frazier, who had been adopted by a conservative pro-war movement. So they were on opposite ends idealistically as well.
This is perfect,
so
man.
it's kind of ironic that they chose that night for that reason as well.
I can't believe.
However, Frazier would win the fight in a 15-round unanimous decision, but it was the first of a trilogy, followed by two rematches, both won by Muhammad Ali. So
Yeah, but there's like conspiracies around those two fights as well. There's a lot of shit around those, especially that.
Which one's the rematches?
I think especially the final one.
The whole trilogy.
Frazier threw the match. Because if you fight once, right, and one guy wins, it only makes sense let the other guy win the next time, right? Now it's one-on-one. Now we got to have a tiebreaker. And who better than the fighter of the people. Ali, let the people have this, right? Let them feel like they won this, because this doesn't matter to their rights or to their freedoms. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. It may just be.
Yeah, I'm not a big boxing history aficionado.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just too far back. I do definitely remember watching like Mike Tyson in the 90s and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I don't go back and watch those old 70s boxing matches too often.
Gotcha. Yeah, me either.
So,
but I'm just talking about.
Yeah. Nonetheless, while the world was watching this much anticipated boxing match, Keith Forsyth made his way unabated to the FBI office on the third floor of the apartment building, attempting to gain entry. He had it, he had it in his mind that it was going to be no problem to pick that lock. It was just a matter of getting to the office door without being seen. And once he got there, he realized that he was sadly mistaken, that they had changed the lock. Upon arriving at room 203, which was the FBI office, he discovered that the FBI had installed a lock on the main door that he could not pick. It was a circular keyhole, much like you see on a bike lock, the circle with the little line on top.
Looks like a power symbol.
And
almost.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. After calling Bill Davidon from a payphone with the bad news. So he kind of was like, shit, this ain't going to work. And he ran down to a payphone and called the boss, Bill, the master planner of this whole scheme, and let him know the bad news. They decided that, they would talk to Bonnie because she was there in the office, and she told him, you know what, there was another door in that office that she spotted when she pretended like she got lost.
Right.
And the door was on that same floor. So I'm picturing like a hotel floor. You got doors on each side, and I think that there was two doors next to each other, and you wouldn't think that the other door was part of the same office, but it connected, and they had like a file cabinet in front of this other door. It was blocked by a file cabinet, but she could tell that there was a door there.
But it was locked as well.
So
but it didn't have one of these updated
Yes,
locks.
it was locked, but it didn't have the circular lock. It just had a normal keyhole.
Right.
Yeah, so Keith went back up, went to the other door, picked it, and began to try and open the door, and he discovered that there was actually a deadbolt on it as well.
Bitch.
And the deadbolt was locked. So he then resorted to using a crowbar to pry the door open, and then he had the file cabinet in front of the door as well. So he had to nudge little by little, and he actually said, at least the documentary would lead you to believe that the boxing match was being listened to by like the building's
the manager.
What did they say it was?
Like the maintenance
manager of the building. Yeah, he was on the floor below, listening loudly so loud on the TV that he could actually hear the boxing match going on, and he timed pushing his pry and breaking the door open. He timed it to where there was like the crowd going crazy on the TV. I don't know if that was just kind of played up to make it a little bit more interesting for the documentary.
I don't know. I feel like that's kind of common sense if you're in that situation.
Well, of course, but it's just almost too perfect, right?
It is. But this dude, gotta give this guy some credit. He's got some damn balls of steel to sit there in an FBI office that long, prying that door open.
Yeah.
I mean, 5 minutes? That's
because if he had just pushed really hard, he would have knocked the file cabinet over, making a huge crashing sound and for sure blowing their cover.
That must have felt like an eternity, man. And it.
Yeah, he's just nudging inch by inch until he could squeeze through.
Oh my God, it's nerve-wracking as hell. He said, yeah, it was a tense situation. I was like, yeah, right. You fucking sweating bullets, boy, when you got out there. I know it.
Right. Yeah. So he finally did squeeze his way through. He unlocked the main door to the office and gave word to the group, who arrived with a bunch of, I think they had like 10 suitcases. They were each carrying like 2 in each hand. Quote, "I knew we'd find things in that office that were not only immoral, but probably illegal," said Keith Forsyth. So they gain entry. I think there was 2 big file cabinets, and after packaging up the documents into suitcases, they piled into getaway cars and rendezvoused at a farmhouse to sort through what they had stolen. And this is party time. They've pulled it off, and now they get that's like Christmas times 10. Like, what do we have here?
I know.
You're opening those suitcases and going through those files.
Stay up
like,
all
holy
night.
shit, what do we got?
Freaking looking through that shit.
Yeah, and they're having moments where like one of them will just yell out like, "Holy shit, you got to see this!"
Yeah, often.
Yeah. Yeah, and to their relief, they soon discovered that the bulk of it was hard evidence of the FBI spying on political groups, things that went beyond their scopes of what they were supposed to be able to do according to the Constitution. Like First Amendment, they were breaking many First Amendment laws and things like that. Identifying themselves as the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI, the burglars sent select documents to several newspaper reporters and politicians, most of which, being afraid of the FBI, hand-delivered the documents back to the FBI headquarters. They almost did this all for nothing. Honestly, there was only one reporter that they sent this to. They sent it to I think they sent it to 5 different people that were either heads of, they were either high up in like newspaper companies, like the New York Times and the Washington Post, things like that. They were high up reporters there. They were sending these to, or even politicians, and only one actually decided it would be okay to publish these, or had the balls to do it. We'll say that.
Or felt like they had the responsibility, maybe.
Yeah, Betty Metzger. Betty Metzger at the Washington Post, who worked at the Washington Post at the time, was one of the 5 people selected by the group to receive the files, and she was the only recipient who did not return the files back to the FBI.
Right on.
There was a lot of fear of the FBI. Even like the president, during this time, the FBI had so much power. They were almost like a mob. Like even like high up ranking members of the government at the time were afraid of the FBI.
Yeah, they were scary. They were mysterious.
Yeah, if the president tried to do anything to diminish the FBI's power, they would just dig up some dirt on him.
Yeah,
that's how it
plant
worked.
that shit or have him assassinated.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
God. But yeah, after this article was posted, though, then other newspapers were like, "Oh, okay, she already did it, so like we can do it now, right? It'd be a shame. Like, I mean, it's already happened.
It'd be a shame to miss out on these I would say ratings or whatever they would use to measure their success back in the day, newspaper sales or whatever it was.
Yeah, that's going through the roof.
Yeah. So it was the first time a journalist received secret government files from people outside of the government, as opposed to whistleblowers who had stolen the files. So yeah, this is not an insider, turning against the organization they work for. This is people who actually broken in and stolen these files firsthand. Yeah. So 2 weeks after the burglary, Miss Metzger wrote the first article based on the files after the Nixon administration tried to unsuccessfully get the Post to return the documents. So she said, "No, I think I'm going to go ahead and publish them."
I think I'm going to hold on to
2 weeks after the burglary. Yeah, 2 weeks after the burglary, Miss Metzger wrote the first article based on the files. Other news organizations, as you mentioned, that had received the documents, including the New York Times, followed with their own reports.
How brave.
Miss Metzger's article highlighted a 1970 memorandum that offered a glimpse into Hoover's obsession with snuffing out dissent. The document urged agents to step up their interviews of anti-war activists and members of dissident groups. It will enhance the paranoia endemic in these circles and will further serve to get the point across that there's an FBI agent behind every mailbox. So they were trying to incite just complete paranoia within these groups of dissenters that would, lead them to believe that they should fear that they're going to be arrested at any given moment, that there's FBI agents everywhere, that the person you're talking to at this protest, you don't know if they started to not trust each other, everyone that was going to these protests and stuff, because they didn't know who was an FBI agent and who wasn't. That was their goal.
Oh yeah,
was to incite that kind of fear.
Mental warfare right there. That's tough to battle. What the hell are you supposed to do?
Yeah, and they were trying to, and they were even getting to professors at colleges and trying to get them to report on any kind of like students who had extreme political views. They wanted them to basically let them know and give them their names and things like that.
Yeah,
another document
in turn,
signed by Hoover.
I was going to say, they also, to compound on the college professor thing, they also wanted these college professors to basically condemn the new left, is what they were calling it, the new left. These new liberals, I guess, that were coming on the scene at the time, they were actually wanting them to teach against them, or teach against those practices.
Yeah.
I don't know what the message was.
Yeah, the FBI, I don't know if that's their place. That's kind of not their concern. It shouldn't be, at least.
Shit. But I'm wondering, like, how they were, like, were these, like, implied threats? Like, you need to be teaching like this, we're watching you? Or were they just suggestions made by anonymous letter writers? Concerned parents, if you will, or something like that.
Yeah, that they would like to do that. They were doing the same thing to Martin Luther King, sending his wife anonymous letters, basically telling him to kill himself. That was exposed as well.
Yes.
Pretty crazy.
Yep. And they gave him a timeline. They told him he had 34 days to kill himself.
Yeah, because that was when he was going to get the Nobel Peace Prize. And before he received that prize, they wanted him to. They didn't say it directly in these anonymous letters, but they were saying, you know what to do, Dr. King. You know what to do. Another document signed by Hoover himself revealed widespread FBI surveillance of black student groups on college campuses, and the FBI had up to 200 agents working on this case once they had been exposed. This got even more crazy as far as like the FBI's heat trying to find whoever had done this heist, because once the records were exposed, it was like they were caught with their pants down, and now the only way they could get power back is to capture this group and punish them with the full extent of the law, so they could get some sort of respect back,
right,
I guess.
Yeah, and fear.
At least make an example out of them, so that no one else would try to do this again.
Right. Exactly. They wanted revenge, and like you said, they wanted.
Yeah,
to get
they didn't get that
fear.
satisfaction. The group was never caught, no matter how many people they interviewed, no matter how many people they grilled to try and get information. They had lists of people that they were sure these were members of the group, and most of them were not. They only actually had one member of the group was on their lists, one member, and they weren't able to get him. They did interview him, and he didn't give up anything. It was the real squirrely dude. I don't remember his name, but
Bob.
I think that's why, because he looked like he was not very bashful about his. He was in like every group that did this stuff.
Yeah.
He was a wild one.
I think that his name was Bob something.
Yeah.
Bob Williamson.
Bob was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a crazy life.
Yep. The document that would have the biggest impact on the reining of the FBI's domestic spying activities was an internal routing slip dated 1968 bearing a mysterious word, COINTELPRO. And initially, the media didn't really know what to make of it. They didn't read too much into that word, COINTELPRO. Neither the media burglars nor the reporters who received the documents understood the meaning of the term, and it was not until several years later when NBC News reporter Carl Stern obtained more files from the FBI under the Freedom of Information Act that the details of COINTELPRO, shorthand for counterintelligence program, were revealed. Since 1956, the FBI had carried out an expansive campaign to spy on civil rights leaders, political organizers, and suspected communists, and had tried to sow distrust among protest groups. So they were trying to divide and conquer, essentially, these protest groups.
Right. What everyone suspects that they're doing, and it's still happening now. You see those crazy accounts on Instagram where if you see if you see any people in your feed that's just constantly posting like extremely divisive stuff, check that shit out, because it's probably, I don't know, it might be a Russian account, might be a Russian bot, right? Or an FBI agent. I feel like that's how they're infiltrating us now.
I mean, I think it is part of the
easiest way.
FBI's job to keep an eye on all politically motivated groups,
but not to throw gas
even
on the
protesters,
fire,
things like that. Yeah, to know what's going on, to keep an eye on them, but to infiltrate and try to divide and to try and really to agitate and make them look like their groups are doing things that they're not, when it was their own agents doing these things.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Yeah. So among the details was a blackmail letter FBI agents had sent anonymously to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, threatening to expose his extramarital affairs if he did not commit suicide. Quote, "It wasn't just spying on Americans," said Locke K. Johnson, then professor of public and international affairs at the University of Georgia. The intent of COINTELPRO was to destroy lives and ruin reputations. So basically, the whole point is they were going beyond their scope of what they were allowed to do, and they were doing it with immunity for way too long, and they needed to be exposed, and that's what happened, because their power was unchecked for far too long, and they were going beyond what our Constitution allows them to do.
Absolutely, this had to be done, and if it wasn't them, it would have been somebody else. It was building up to that point. And the longer it would have went, the more confident the FBI would have gotten. I mean, look at that. Look at the shit that they were keeping in that little tiny office in Media, Pennsylvania. It's insane.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what was at the main office in Philadelphia, right?
It does. A lot.
They're keeping this shit in those little file cabinets in an apartment building.
Right. You're keeping the fact that you tried to get Martin Luther King to commit suicide in an apartment building in Media, Pennsylvania. But of course, maybe that is the whole plan. Maybe that is where they keep the most important documents, is in the small places.
Yeah, if that's so, then at least put the documents in a safe or something within the office.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of just in a normal file cabinet with no lock on it.
Well, I'm sure they figured that out by now.
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely there was a lot of changes made following
Oh,
this.
yeah. All right.
Yeah. So Senator Church's investigation in the mid-1970s, in 1975, revealed still more about the extent of the decades of FBI abuse and led to greater congressional oversight of the FBI and other American intelligence agencies. That's all. You just need some oversight. You just can't do whatever you want. Like the CIA had been running rampant with their crazy programs as well for a long time through the 60s and 70s.
Right.
Experimenting on people unknowingly, doing all kinds of shit like that.
Yeah. So there's got to be checks and balances for everything, man.
Yeah. You got to work within the laws and within the Constitution. So the Church Committee's final report about domestic surveillance was blunt. Quote, too many people have been spied upon by too many government agencies and too much information has been collected. By the time the committee released its report, J. Edgar Hoover was dead and the empire he had built at the FBI was steadily being dismantled. Now, obviously, it's still around today and still plays a major role in the U.S. The roughly 200 agents he had assigned to investigate the media burglary came back empty-handed, and the FBI closed the case on March 11th, 1976, 3 days after the statute of limitations for burglary charges had expired. And so the group had ostensibly gotten away with it.
That many people got away with such a high-profile crime when 200 agents were assigned to investigate it.
I know, right? Maybe if they had spent less time investigating, hippies and trying to infiltrate and break apart their peace movements and stuff, they'd have been a little bit better at investigating true crimes, real things real burglaries and stuff that have been going on.
What's crazy is you narrowed it down to the Philadelphia area, and you still couldn't find them. It's not like they were going all over the U.S. even. They were just in Philly.
Yeah, I mean, without members of the group talking, which they kind of went their separate ways and stayed and just went back to their normal lives, without them talking, they had nothing because they were very careful. They wore gloves throughout the whole entire process. They got close with the Xerox machines.
That's how they narrowed it down to the area.
So the group, they didn't realize that there was like a fingerprint to each Xerox machine that could lead you back to. They could find out which Xerox machine had printed out the copies that they had sent to the reporters, and they got very close to catching them with that, but they didn't quite get them.
Didn't they alter like the drum or something on the Xerox machine? Apparently, there was a way to because
did they?
One of the guys worked at a place, and his Xerox machines got tested first. And then he knew that they were going to be headed to the other branch where the Xerox machine that they actually used was at. So he called his friend there, and
they got a tip off.
Well, I mean, they came to one of the guys' works, so he saw them there.
Yep.
So they tipped him off, and then I think they scarred up that drum of the other Xerox machine, and that's how. So they actually had to take some action there, or they would have been able to narrow it down to that exact building. Then it would have got real intense.
Right.
So,
yep.
But they did note, before they even started searching Xerox machines in that area, they knew from Xerox Corporation that it was sold in the Philadelphia area. So that's how they knew to narrow it down there.
Yeah. So they came close with the Xeroxes, but they never did catch them. And with these events that had taken place, and with the new exposure that the FBI's corruption had been given now, Michael P. Corton, a spokesperson for the FBI, said that, quote, a number of events during that era, including the media burglary, contributed to changes how the FBI identified and addressed domestic security threats, leading to the reform of the FBI's intelligence policies and practices and creation of investigative guidelines by the Department of Justice. So the DOJ, which oversees the FBI, weren't doing enough. And that changed following this. And they just needed more guidance. They need more guidelines from the DOJ. So following the church committee hearings, there seems to have been a loosening of intelligence agencies spying on and interventions in activism for a while. They had a nice run, I think.
They laid off for a little while.
From 1975 all the way up until 2001, there was a much looser grip as far as the surveillance of the general public and the intervention in political groups and things like that until 9/11. And then we had the Patriot Act signed by George Bush, which gave those agencies, greater power once again. And that's where you see like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange come out and whistleblow about all of the pervasive spying on the American citizens that had been going on again through the 2000s. So to wrap this thing up, in 2014, several of the members decided to end their silence thanks to a book called The Burglary, written by Betty Metzger, the former reporter from the Washington Post, the woman with brass balls who decided to, actually do something with these files that were given to her. She spent years sifting through the FBI's case file and persuaded 5 of the 8 men and women who participated in the break-in to end their silence. I think she was, if I'm not mistaken, she spent the latter years of her life after retiring from working for the newspaper and stuff to write this book, and she started sitting down with and interviewing people that they were activists during the time. And I think I want to say the Rainies, she sat down with them to interview, and she didn't know that they were members, and they basically told her, like, look, we were the members. And then they gave her, the names of the other activists, and she could contact them. And I think that's where it went from, if I'm not mistaken.
She just had them on a list just because she knew that they were active at the time, being civil rights activists.
Yeah, I could be off on that. But yeah, it basically, she found out by accident, if you will, or they just came clean to her.
They were like, man, what better time than now, right? It's kind of like a little reunion.
Yeah, so she got them to end their silence, and that's where a lot of this information has come from. John and Bonnie Raines say that they know some people will criticize them for taking part in something like that. If they had been caught and convicted, it might have separated them from their children for most of their lives, but they insist they would never have joined the team of burglars had they not been convinced that they would get away with it. Quote, "It looks like we were terribly reckless people," Mr. Raines said. But there was absolutely no one in Washington, senators, congressmen, even the president, who dared hold J. Edgar Hoover to accountability. It became pretty obvious to us, he said, that if we don't do it, nobody will. That says it perfectly. Like we said, everybody was so afraid of the FBI at that time. J. Edgar Hoover had this unchecked power, and he was abusing it, and it needed to be exposed. So they felt this strong responsibility to do it, even if it meant putting their lives on the line to do so.
You saw it as reckless if they did it, and they saw it as careless if they didn't. And that was, to them, that seemed like a bigger crime. It's like you're just being apathetic. You're talking, all their life's work up until this point would have been for nothing. All the marching, all the civil rights work, and all that stuff, and then you're gonna just let this slide. You have a chance to make the biggest impact. Yeah.
Keith Forsyth said it best. He said, quote, "When you talk to people outside the movement about what the FBI was doing, nobody wanted to believe it. There was only one way to convince people that it was true, and that was to get it in their handwriting. So to get the cold hard proof, their written files. There was no way around it. If you got your hands on those files and exposed them, much like many modern day whistleblowers have done, then they can't backpedal. There's not much they can say. They just have to come clean." So,
man, Keith Forsyth, man, like we said, he was the lockpick, right? Oh. Yeah, man, he had some balls to steal as well. He probably wish he had some "Oh My Guy" in there while he was pushing that door open, man. He was sweating in that suit.
Yeah, he was sweating when he was pushing, fucking cracking those locks.
If he had some "Oh My Guy," it'd have been a lot better. Oh My Guy is an innovative, all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. Their innovative line of deodorants inhibit the growth of odor-causing bacteria while maintaining effectiveness. At Oh My Gaia, they use only all-natural, paraben, and aluminum-free organic ingredients. Guys, there's tons of scents to choose from at Oh My Gaia, and there's probably new scents that I'm not even mentioning in this ad on the website right now. But a few are vanilla, cherry almond, sandalwood, lavender, lemongrass, Egyptian musk, coconut, dreamsicle, leather, lumberjack, honeysuckle, fireside, bergamot amber, Idaho, pear, and we have our very own scent called True Crime Pine that has our old school podcast logo on there, the very first one we started with, the old Mugshots logo. It's decidedly unisex scent. And if you don't know what to get, maybe that's a great place to start. And maybe they could send you a few samples of some things and you could try in the future. But because you guys are True Crime Guys listeners, you can use the word creeper for 15% off. That's CREEPER for 15% off your order at shop_ohmygaia on Instagram or at ohmygaia.com. OHMYGAIA.com. Do it, guys. Won't regret it.
Do it.
We actually got an email from a listener today talking about how much they loved Oh My Gaia and how they could not believe they waited so long. And we was like, we've been telling you. We've been telling you for a while. 4 years.
For 4 years now. You've been walking around with them sticky pits, not believing us.
And you could have a jar of Oh My Gaia on your dresser to freshen yourself up every morning, not put aluminum in your pits. It's a shame. All right.
Well, I want to give a thanks and a quick shout out to those of you that have gone and rated and reviewed the show this past week. We got Kirby in the United States said, love it, 5 stars. Love the show, guys. Also love the banter. It has become my favorite podcast. Then we got Clyde's Bond in the U.S. said, addicted, 5 stars. Love this podcast. Easy and fun to listen to all day. Thank you. We got Chassis Baby in Canada said 5 stars. Hey, guys, love your podcast. Listening to Dear Zachary, wanted to let you know how to say Newfoundland. You say it like understand. Also, this case devastated our province. Yes. You say it like understand?
Understand. Newfoundland.
You say it
like Newfoundland, right?
You say it like understand. I don't know what you mean.
Newfoundland.
Isn't it Newfoundland? I thought it was Newfoundland. That's not how you say it.
Understand. How's that sound? That doesn't sound like it at all. I'm joking. Yeah.
Whatever, we're done. Then we got Cami House in Canada said, hey, 5 stars. Guys, what's up? Cami here from Sylvan Lake, AB, Alberta, Canada. Whoop, whoop. Love the podcast. You guys kill me with your humor. 1 episode a week is definitely not enough for me. You're one of my faves. Keep doing what you're doing. Peace. Thank you all for taking the time to do that. We do appreciate it. It keeps us motivated seeing that you guys are still loving the show out there. So, yeah, if you haven't done that, go and rate and review. Even if you don't want to write anything, just put in click 5 stars and put some fire emojis or something. You have to write something in the details section so that we can actually give you a shout out. Otherwise, it just shows up as a number instead of an actual review.
But we appreciate that as well. You're not just a number to us.
No. Neither are the patrons. The patrons...
Oh, absolutely not.
Over at patreon.com/truecrimeguys. We enjoy you guys so much. We've been enjoying all of your questions and topics to talk about on Just the Banter, a show that we do once a week, just for Patreon members, $5 and up. $2 a month gets you access to all of our premium episodes, the once a month episode that's not on the main feed, that's just for patrons. $2 a month gets you access to that. And $5 a month and up gets you Just the Banter and a very prestigious Gold Creep Band sticker. So if you can't get enough of our show, go over there to patreon.com/truecrimeguys. Throw us a few bucks and you get a ton of stuff, man. There's hundreds of episodes and recordings on there. So much stuff.
We probably have as much on Patreon, if not more, than on the free platform now.
I think so, yeah. Between all the different shows you've done on there. Your whole Higher Thoughts series is on there.
Right,
all of our
and then
premium,
with Just the Banter.
Just the Banter, all of our premium 2 to 3 hour heavy hitter episodes, the biggest name serial killers, all of that is on there.
Yes.
So yeah.
There's an extensive catalog on there, guys, so make sure you check that out. And if you already have, and you're all caught up, we have a whole other show for you, Strange and Unexplained. Wherever you listen, True Crime Guys presents Strange and Unexplained, if you will. There might be some confusion out there when you type it into your podcast player. You'll see what I'm talking about. But either way, it's the one that looks like our logo. We needed. It was time for a branding change so people don't get confused. But Strange and Unexplained. If you guys type True Crime Guys into your podcast player, it should come up. It's where we focus on unsolved, missing persons, and just strange cases. I break down the case for you, give you the facts, give you a little speculation, and Lauren likes to come in at the end with his version of the story as well. And then, we get to compare, and you also get multiple takes of the story. So, Strange and Unexplained, guys, wherever you listen. All right.
Does that do it? Everything is down in the bottom of the episode in the description. All the links to our merch, our sources. There was a great New York Times article for this case that we used. We paired that along with the documentary 1971. So yeah, check out our sources down there at the bottom if you want to know more about this case. and all of our merch and sponsors, whatever else is down there. Anything
right.
you want. So
Patreon as well.
Yep. Links to everything down there. And that about does it. We'll see you guys next week.
Yep.
Keep creeping.
True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder, get murder. True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder charming.